Hello, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I'm going to go over the basic karate punch, the chokuzuki. Now this is going to be good for beginners, of course, to understand the technique and to learn it outside of the dojo, but also as higher graded karateka, we know that the fundamentals and the principles that we learn within the technique in just our basic punch carries over into the rest of our karate as well. Now the first thing we want to think about is what part of our hand are we going to be landing on the target. Okay, this is very important because this is the weapon at the end. And if we're landing with a weapon that is weak, we're going to end up with a problem ourselves. So we are making a fist first with the thumb on the outside of the fingers, and we are connecting with the first two knuckles, these ones here, okay? What we want to make sure of when we are punching then is these two knuckles are lined up through the arm and through the body and creating a good structure behind that punch. So we are not just hitting with the arm, but hitting with the entire body. So then from that position, what I want to do in order to go over or practice this basic punch is have my punch extended first of all. What I want to think about from here is having the lats squeezing, so my shoulder is being pulled down this way, okay, to keep the shoulders away from my ears like this and then prevent a very shouldery looking punch. So lats squeeze down, and a way we can kind of practice this feeling is to get our hand against the surface here and press down against it with a straight hand to get the lats engaging, and we can feel those muscles working from there. If I actively push down against my hand this way, I can feel the lats contracting and as a result pulling my shoulders down into that punch, connecting with the obliques and all through the body this way. So I'll find that position first then, okay? Shoulder down, lats squeezed. First thing I want to do is very basic motion is supinate the hand, so turn the palm upwards, okay? This is the first thing to get the elbow pointing down. I want to then collapse from that elbow and pull back to my hip this way. Remember, when we are doing the punching actual application, we don't have to go from the hip. The hip is a training exercise, you know, so we're working on delivering the technique, having those kind of reference points in which we can connect the punch to. So again, from here, palm is supinated first. Then the elbow pulls down this way, close to the body, so we are kind of feeling that arm rub against the side of our body here, okay? I don't want to come outside this way, here, grip, imagine we're gripping. You know, the meaning of hikite is to pull, the pulling hand. So really this hand is thinking about pulling back this way. So I'm rotating and pulling back, okay, from here. Be careful not to let the shoulder come in here. Pull that back, again, lats engaged. From this position then, I slide it back out the way that it came. Still palm up. Once I get to the end, I'll then drill that punch in with those first two knuckles, okay? Again, keeping those lats engaged underneath. Supinate the hand, pull back to the hip. Slide it back out, rotate. Now from here, this is only just the arm. So what I want to now start adding to this is the body as well. So I'll supinate the hand, pull the hand back to the hip. As I do that, I drop my hip back slightly. Okay, I don't want to lose any kind of position with my legs. Just keep my legs nice and strong and still. From here, I start sending the hand out and then connect the hip at the end. Some people will do it differently and they'll fire the hip first and have more of a whipping action, but I like to have this drilling in at the end, so the hip is engaged on impact. Either way works for different people, but for me, this is what I prefer. So again, from here, supinate the wrist, pull the elbow back. As I get back here, I pull back into my hip. I start sending it again here, across the body, and then connect the hip at the last second as I make impact, okay? So front arm position from here. Again, supinate the wrist, pull back, send forwards, connect to the hip, last second. Okay, then we start smoothing that off. One, smooth and connect, smooth and connect, smooth and connect. Of course, in our basic karate Kion, we will have hikite action as well. So this one's coming back, or this one's going forwards. Rotate, send, connect the hip. Rotate, send, connect the hip at the last second. Rotate, send, connect the hip. I want to feel like I'm almost relaxing from here, and as a result that elbow kind of drops, so I'm relaxing and pulling this way. Okay, so rather than trying to think about pulling so hard, it's more just collapsing that elbow down, collapse and send the punch in this way. Of course, we don't need hikite at all. The other hand can be up here while we're still delivering that same technique. Here, connect, and we can guard here, this way. Yeah, we can do any kinds of things with these hands at the same time. We don't need to be pulling back into hikite to make that punch stronger or anything like that. It doesn't add strength to the punch. It is simply a training exercise. One mistake we want to be wary of is rotating the fist too soon. So from here, if I rotate my wrist early, this happens and the elbow pops out, which then becomes a very shouldery punch here, right? Flicking that punch. And as a result of that flickiness, I cannot get my hip engaged properly. Yeah? It's hard to do so. So I want to keep that hand supinated as long as possible and then connect as we go through. Okay, so we're driving from almost like an uppercut sort of feeling. So I'm coming upwards and driving into the target. I also want to remember, I'm not hitting or landing with a fully extended arm. My elbow is still bent on impact, okay? So I'm connecting about here. That's why the hip then connects later, because I'm connecting with the target and driving in to penetrate through the target then. Okay, so if I send my hip early, hip first, it becomes a whip, okay? Send the hand and then rotate that hip into the body and we have that kind of penetration going on. So I want to send the fist upside down, connect about here and then drive through, yeah? If I'm connecting with a fully extended arm, all the power's gone, you know? There's nothing left in this. This is the end of the punch. The connection happens about here, so I'll rotate it and pull it back slightly, connect with those first two knuckles and drive through. Okay, so when we take this then into a kumite position, so we're more in a guard from this position here. Okay, so I'm loaded. Now, the hand doesn't start from the hip, as I said earlier. You know, the hand is more forwards. And this is why our kumite guard is the way it is. You know, the backhand is kind of across the body, across the center line here. The front hand can deal with any attacks that are incoming from here. Okay, our body's rotated, so we don't necessarily need this backhand up next to the face because we've got the front hand dealing with it all. Okay, we're turned away, we can slip away, we've got lots of movement in our kumite. Okay, so from here, the backhand is ready, loaded into position. All I need to do now then is, this part is already done, so I just need to connect the hip for that gyakuzuki there. So maybe as the opponent approaches and comes into the space, I can cover with the front hand or parry across and then just drill that hip in with the hand as we did in the basic form earlier on. Okay, so it's here, connect, one, there, that action. Connect the hip and it's done. So the hip, so what we've taken in from there is we've lost all this part where there's no hip action and we've brought it into guard and then we're just drilling that in from there. Because we've trained the ki on a basic form and understood how to send the punch from a very basic, bigger action. We now understand how to connect the hip to the punch. So I simply connect that hip with the punch and drill it in as they approach. Here. Front hand can deal with anything that comes in. Again, I don't need to make hikite. Hikite doesn't add anything to my punch. All it does is exposes my face for maybe a kick or something. Okay? In close range fighting, hikite is good for grappling, you know, pulling, manipulating the opponent in this way. In kumite though, when we're kind of more striking, this hand can be up front and it can deal with oncoming attacks while I send the other punches in from there. Now, if we're going to make kizamizuki, the front hand, again, is nicely loaded. The hip, same. The hip is ready to go. I can fire that hip as we did with a punch and I can send it straight away. Back. There's no need to pull back to engage the hip because, again, of all this work, we practiced connecting the hip at that last second. Okay? From here, connect at the last second. Okay, so it's not necessary for me to make big movements because in our functional or our ki on our fundamental training, we make the big movements to understand how to make the smaller movements. So it's important to make sure we are making impact with our punch in order to fully understand the mechanics of it. So I've got a pad set up here. It's not an ideal situation, but it's going to work. So I'm going to keep the pad up here because it will fall down otherwise. What I want to do is start sending my hand and then drilling into the punch, drilling into the pad at the last second. Here, hand, connect. Last second. This way. It's making sure I'm getting into the pad and not on the surface. I don't want to be hitting the surface with a straight arm. I'm coming into the pad with the arm still bent here. So once we understand the basic form of the punch, we can then apply that to all of our techniques. So we can make Gyan Barai. And from that position, we can start sending the arm and connect the hip last second. One, here. So in our blocks or our defensive techniques, we can make the same feeling. Connect, last second. Here, same feeling. One. Yeah, all of our motions have that same feeling of connection at the end of the technique where the hips engage. And really they're engaging when we make connection with our partner or our opponent. That's when I want my hips to be working, because that's when I need the power or the strength. Okay, so even that Shuto position from here, hip, last second connects with the hip in the same way that the punch was engaged with the hip right at the last second. So it seems very basic, you know, the basic first lesson, maybe you learn your basic punch in karate, but it carries over to all of your training for forever, really, you know, as long as you practice your karate. So make sure you keep on top of these kind of fundamental movements. Now, I just want to mention my partnership and sponsor really with Art Martial Clothing. They are partially making these videos possible. They're a martial arts inspired clothing brand with lots of really nice designs. I've got a few different versions in my other videos. I'm going to put a link to their website in my video description with a discount code for 20% off, okay? So if you want something for training, have a look, see what they got. Really nice bits. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a subscribe, like, comment, let me see what you'd like to see next time, and I'll see you in the next video.